Hello, welcome to Kirsty's Pilates in Paradise. I'm here on the island of Macanudu in the Maldives, and this is the second part of band on the sand. I'm going to be doing some seated and lying down exercises with the band. I've got a band with the soft handles, which is great. If you haven't got one of these, don't worry, you can use a normal band. I just like these. So I'm going to start with some little roll backs. So sitting up with the band around your feet. Try to sit up nice and tall, depend on the shape of your back. If you can, lengthen the spine, sit up nice and tall. You're going to squeeze the tummy in. So you're breathing in to prepare as you breathe out, tucking the bottom under and squeezing the tummy in as you curl down. I'm only going to do little baby ones today and then come back up to the top. So you're tucking the bottom under, squeezing the tummy, and you're trying to curl your spine down nice and smoothly. Of course, you're squeezing your tummy in and you're lifting up your pelvic floor, which I forgot to say at the beginning, but hopefully you did that already. So, tucking under, squeezing the tummy in. I'm not going to do many of these. You're breathing nice and deeply. Trying to keep your shoulders relaxed, which can be difficult when you're holding onto the band. So let's add a bit of excitement to this. So if you've got these bands, it's nice and easy to take the arms out to the side. Try to sit up nice and tall when you come back. Lengthen the spine. Don't forget to breathe nice and deeply. Lovely. I've got quite a beautiful view here, just looking out over the sea. Very nice. Okay, so we can add in a little bit of a twist. Make sure you're tightening up the tummy. So you could do a bow and arrow, just take the elbow back. And the other elbow. Of course, if you feel anything pulling or hurting in your back, please stop. Only do what is comfortable for your body. Make this movement a little bit bigger by using the whole arm. That's harder if you've got a stronger band. The yellow band is quite nice. Sitting tall, tucking the bottom under. Let's do a few more of these. Okay, so another thing you could do sitting in this position is your triceps, which we did in the standing up section. So if you sit up nice and tall, if you struggle to sit up with your spine long, then this might be difficult for you, but if you can, sit up nice and tall, hands on your waist, elbows tucked in. Just going to take the arms behind you. You can lean forwards to make it a little bit easier. I really like this move with these bands. You're not forgetting to breathe. You're squeezing the tummy in. You're lifting up the pelvic floor. Really working your triceps. That is beautiful. Okay, so I'm just going to lie down. And I'm going to put the band around 1 foot. So you're in your nice neutral position, of course, with your pelvis nice and flat and neutral. Your ribs relaxed, your shoulders relaxed, your pelvic floor lifted and your tummy squeezed in. Band is around 1 foot. I'm going to lengthen this leg. You can hold it quite tight. And you can have it as close in towards you as is comfortable for you. I'm going to do a single leg circle. So I'm doing very, very small circles with the leg. The movement is coming from the hip. So really importantly, tighten up the tummy. Keep the pelvis nice and still. So what you don't want is the pelvis to be tilting. The pelvis should be nice and flat at all times. Now if you make this movement bigger, it's easier to let the pelvis go. So try to keep the movement nice and small. unless you're very clever and you're keeping the pelvis still with the movements bigger. Now, you could make this harder by lifting up the other leg into a tabletop position. So that's going to be much harder on your core. You're going to work much harder to keep the pelvis neutral, to keep the tummy tight. Knee is above the hip and the shins parallel to the floor. So I've done my circles in one direction, and then I'm taking them back the other way. This is quite nice, but obviously if you have any issues with your back, then please don't do this. Stick to having the foot on the floor. That's much, much easier for your back. Not forgetting to breathe, not forgetting to squeeze the tummy in. Lovely. I'm going to swap legs. So bend around the other foot. So try to keep this leg nice and straight, don't let it bend. You've got your tiny little circles. So you're keeping the pelvis still, nice and flat, shouldn't be moving at all. Also this knee should be nice and still. Nice small circles. And then to make it harder, lift the leg up. Hopefully in a nice tabletop position with the knee above your hip and the shin parallel to the floor. Take the leg back the other way, tiny little circles. Nothing's moving apart from your leg coming from your hip joint. Breathing, of course, will help make it nice and gentle. Lovely. All right, I'm going to put that button down. So I'm going to swap legs. I'm just going to do one more in this position. I'm going to do a single leg raise. Really, really simple exercise. You can do this without the band, but I quite like to do it with the band. So your other leg is nice and still. This knee is nice and still. Leg's nice and straight. We're lifting and lowering the leg. So you're focusing on keeping the pelvis nice and still, not letting it tilt, not letting the back arch. You can take it up higher if you want to. If you want a bit of a stretch, take it up higher. You're going to be stretching your hamstring down the back of your leg. Or if you want to keep it low, that's fine. You're going to be working your core muscles a little bit more. That is your single leg raise. Again, you could make it harder if you wanted to by lifting up this leg. And if the knee's above the hip, it will be a little bit harder. Make sure the tummy's tight and you're not letting the back arch if you're doing that position. Stick to the easy one. Beautiful. So I'm going to swap legs. Band's nice and tight. Pelvis is still. Lifting and lowering this leg. You can make this movement small, you can make it bigger. Depends what you want out of it. If you want more of a stretch, take it up higher. If you want to work your core muscles more, you can keep it lower. And of course, make it harder by lifting up the other leg. Don't forget to breathe. If you feel your back arching or hurting, please don't do this one. Put the leg back down because it's quite a bit harder. That is your single leg raise. Really, really simple, basic exercise, but quite tough to keep everything still. Lovely. So I'm just going to come onto my side now. You can have a pillow if you want to make it easier. Underneath knee is bent, top leg is straight. I've got the band around my top foot. So I'm just going to lie down. So try to make sure that your hips are stacked in a nice straight line. Your tummy is squeezed in, of course. If you want to work harder, you can lift up your waist here, so you've got a bit of a gap underneath your waist. Hold the band up nice and tight. I'm just going to lift and lower that top leg. So the movement's coming from the hip, the leg is nice and straight, and you're breathing nice and deeply. Now, if you wanted to make it a little bit harder, you could angle that leg back a little bit, take it back behind you, but make sure that you're not arching your back. And if you wanted to make it even harder, you could turn your toes down towards the floor, and just that tiny little movement makes everything a lot harder. So you're tightening up the tummy, you're lifting up the waist if you can, and you're breathing nice and deeply. Okay, let's do circles. So tiny little circles, movement's coming from the hip, nothing else is moving. You're not letting the back move, you're not letting the pelvis move. The legs staying nice and straight. Very, very small circles. In one direction I've still got my toes pointing down because that's harder. And then circles back in the other direction. Lovely. Okay, I'm just going to do 2 more little sets. So I'm going to bring the foot forwards, a little tiny kick coming forward. So if you keep the toes angled down towards the floor, it's much harder. Squeeze the tummy in. Lift up the waist if you can. Legs straight. You're working the glutes really hard. It's very, very good for your hips. Lovely. And then the last set, little kicks going back behind you. So be very careful when you're doing this to not let the back arch, so that nothing above your hip is moving, just the movement is coming from your hip. Toes pointing down. Oh, that's lovely. Should feel it aching. That's enough of that. I am going to swap sides. So band is going around your top foot, underneath knees bent, top leg straight. Relax down on the sand. So your hips are stacked in a nice straight line, your tummy's squeezed in, waist lifted if you can manage that. Band's nice and tight. So we're lifting and lowering that top leg. Angle the leg back if you want to make it a bit harder. Turn the toes down if you want to make it even harder. Nothing's moving above the hip. And you haven't forgotten to breathe. Nice and deeply. You can tighten up the band as much as you like. Obviously the tighter it is, the harder it is, the more resistance you've got. Beautiful. And we've got our little circles, so very, very small circles. They don't have to be big. And you could vary the speed of this. You could do some fast ones and you could do some slow ones. Mix it up a little bit. And then circles back the other way. Again, keep the toes down if you want to make it harder, and keep the leg angled back a little bit. Not letting the hips roll back. This is one of my favourite exercises. Okay, so then we've got 2 more sets. So the little kicks going forward, toes pointing down. Legs nice and straight. Don't forget the tummy. And then the last set, little kicks going back behind you, toes pointing down, don't arch the back. Wonderful. That is it for today. So, thank you so much for joining me in Macanudu by the sea. I hope you join me again soon.